Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us. You are on board for the Revive I-70 virtual public meeting. We are glad to have you. We do have a few more people who are popping in. So I realize it is just 6 o'clock, just a minute after. We are just going to give a minute or two before we get underway because we do have, as I said, a few more people popping in. So we'll give people just a minute or two to get situated, and then we will begin the presentation. Okay, that was fast, but when the dings start slowing, it's time to get rolling. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll introduce myself shortly, but first, I want to do a quick handoff here to Adele Dussold, who is joining us. Adele, great to see you again. Adele is with NDOT. She heads stakeholder services for the Greenfield District, and I'm going to hand things off and let Adele welcome everybody this evening.
All right, thank you, Mindy. First off, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for showing up tonight. Thank you. We know it takes time out of your day to come to these things, but the public involvement for our projects is very important. We value the input we get from these public meetings. Um, and so I wanted to let everyone know what this meeting will look like, and then I will hand it back off to Mindy. So this is a public information meeting, which means this is a great opportunity to learn about this project, Revive I-70, as well as an opportunity to have some dialogue and some questions with our project team, both from NDOT and from our designers. And I do believe we have a few of our project managers with us tonight, both from Parsons, our designers, as well as NDOT. I know that we have Nathan Riggs, who is the project manager from NDOT for this project, and we may have one other as well, Jonathan Wallace. But again, thank you everyone for coming. And like I said, NDOT definitely values the comments and the interactions we get from these public meetings. So Mindy, in a minute here, will go through the PowerPoint, and then afterwards, there will, I believe, be some time for questions and some interaction with the design team. So I think that is all for me tonight, and I will hand it back to Mindy, and we can get this presentation started.
Adele, thank you. Appreciate the help and the welcome there. So before we jump in tonight, and I promise I am going to do a couple of introductions so you can know the faces that you're seeing. But first, I'm going to do just a little bit of housekeeping here. So if you have joined us for this meeting, you're going to notice that microphones are off and cameras are off, except for John and myself. So we just want to make sure that we don't have that background noise that can be distracting. But we do want to make sure that you have a chance to share questions, thoughts, concerns, ideas, things that you want the project team to keep in mind. So please do use that chat function. We have a little inset here. It shows it right at the top of your screen. That's where it's going to be located for most folks. If not, it's not going to be very hard to find. Use that throughout this meeting. We'll be monitoring that chat session, and we'll be making sure that we receive all of those comments. We are reviewing those as a project team. And as Adele said, we do want to have a chance at the end of the presentation to at least any quick questions that we can provide answers for, clarification, that sort of thing. We'll go through those pretty quickly. If you have a comment that is more involved or a question that is going to take a little more digging or is going to be a little more extensive in a response, please do let us know your name and preferred contact information if it doesn't match up with what you use for the meeting registration, and we will get a response back to you. So we won't go through each and every comment and question during tonight's meeting. That's not the intent, but the high level quick ones that we are able to answer, we are happy to do so, and we will be doing that. And please do know that anything that you submit to us via chat is considered by the entire project team and is reviewed by the entire project team. So please do interact with us. We welcome that, and we are glad you were here with us tonight. And with that, I will finally introduce myself. Mindy Peterson. I am with Parsons. So we are the lead design firm on this project, lead consultant. And joining me this evening is John LeBlanc. So he's the other person with the camera on there. And John is the deputy project manager for Revive I-70. So we're going to tag team a little bit tonight and let you know what to expect from this project, and really just hopefully give you a better understanding of what we're talking about with Revive I-70. And as Adele said, we do have several people on board with NDOT. We are largely using this as a listening session tonight. Even if a lot of that listening is by chat, we certainly want your good thoughts and ideas tonight. So what can you expect? First of all, we've been talking about Revive I-70 as a project since late last year. So that's a pretty new project as far as rolling out to the public and giving you a sense of what to expect when we talk about Revive I-70. So we really want to let you know what to expect with the project. We want to talk about those possible improvements. We're still working to identify what is going to make the most sense in this area. And we're going to talk about the process. When you get into a project of this size, there really is a process involved, and that's a very intentional process that is very important. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what you expect, timeline, all of those good things that I'm sure people have questions about. Then we want to make sure that you know next steps. When are you going to hear from us again? What's that going to look like? In the meantime, what are the things that we are doing? How do you follow our progress? So those are all things that we will be hitting on this evening. So we will start with an overview of Revive I-70, and that begins with this map here. And I should say that all of these items that we are talking about tonight, so this map is going to be located on the project website. That's revivei70.com. This presentation is already on the website. So we had a public meeting last night in person at IU East. I had a great crowd there. We had more than 70 people show up, had some good conversation with folks at the display boards, had a short presentation as well. So the materials from last night, the display boards that people could walk around and interact with project team members, those are already up on the project website. These maps are available on the project website. So lots of good information there. Just wanted to point that out as we get underway. And this presentation deck will be there as well. But when we talk about Revive I-70, we are looking at a very large swath of I-70 in Wayne County. So this is basically taking us from west of Cambridge City, and it's taking us all the way to the state line with Ohio there. So that is a large project area that we're talking about. That's 20 plus miles of I-70. And what we really want to do as a project team is, first of all, we need to identify the needs. We have a good sense of what some of those needs are. We're fine tuning some of those needs. We need a strong understanding of what needs are. And then we want to identify the best solutions. So we have some thoughts and ideas that the project team is already taking a closer look at. John's going to talk more about those. We don't have all of the improvements identified at this point, but we can talk about the possibilities and the things that we're looking at. So that's where we are in the process right now. We just looked at the map, so now we're going to put some words to that map that we just looked at. But again, the thing to focus on here is that this is a very large corridor, and we're taking a holistic look at that corridor. So this improvement project is taking us all the way from the State Road 1 interchange to the US 40 interchange east of Richmond. So it is a very large area. We know some things are very evident for folks who are joining us. I'm sure there are many who travel on I-70 on a regular basis, and we're not telling you anything when we tell you that we know there's congestion, and congestion can be an issue. We know there are some safety issues that we're taking a closer look at, and we also know there's a lot of truck traffic on I-70 in this area. So these are all things that the project team is taking a deeper dive and taking a closer look at. And what we can tell you is that NDOT really wants to figure out, what do you do in this area to reduce congestion, improve that traffic flow, and improve safety along I-70? That's what we want to accomplish with I-70, Revive I-70. So now we are in the process of identifying the best way to do that. So that brings us right here to the purpose and need. The purpose and need is an important part of developing this project. We are in what's called the environmental analysis and design stage. We'll talk a little bit more about that just in a minute and tell you what that means. But when we talk about the purpose and need, it really is the why for a project. Why is NDOT taking a look at this area? Why is this team working to identify the needs and solutions? So we know that improvements are needed in this area. So we have what is a preliminary purpose and need right here. So it's on the screen. I don't need to read through all of that, but just to hit some highlights there. If you drive in this area and you drive on I-70 in this area, you know what we're talking about in that first bullet here. The pavement does need some attention. It needs some love. You know that you've seen the patching, you've seen the temporary work. So really it needs a deeper fix there to restore that pavement and make sure the pavement that is nearing the end of its service life is with us and in good shape for a very long time to serve the motorist here. So that's one item. And then when we talk about some of the interchanges in the area, a couple of interchanges in particular that John's going to hit on, um, when they were developed and built, there were different design standards in place. And so when you look at current design standards, there are some issues at those interchanges. There are some things that are not flowing as well as they should. Folks don't have enough room, whether they are needing to get up to speed to get on the interstate, or whether they are decelerating, or whether they're trying to make movement there and it's involving some weaving that is not an ideal situation. These are some of the issues that we want to address and take a closer look at. And then, of course, that last item there is very self-explanatory, but we talked about that congestion, and that really applies to everybody who is using I-70. So we want to figure out the best way to move people. Of course, that's a priority. Also, we have a lot of goods moving along this section of I-70. So we need to figure out how do we move those people and goods and how do we reduce that congestion. So all of these things are items that we're looking at with purpose and need. And we had a comment form last night that outlined this purpose and need. You'll find that on our website as well. And one of the questions we asked of the public was, what are we not thinking about? So when we list these needs here and we talk about some of the things that we've already identified as a project team, what else should we be thinking about? Are there problem areas that you don't see addressed here? Let us know. That's something that you can weigh in with a comment form that you can fill out and upload on our website. Really easy to do. So please do weigh in and let us know what you think. When we talk about an overview for the project, some of these things are things that we just talked about. You're going to hear some familiar themes tonight when we talk about reducing congestion, improving traffic flow, improving safety. I think that's really important for anybody who is using I-70, who has had the experience of being on I-70. This picture here is just speaking to something that we already commented on. You see a lot of truck traffic. I know I saw that when I was driving back and forth from the meeting last night. There are a lot of trucks who are on I-70. So how do we best marry the use of truck traffic and vehicles and make sure that both are coexisting and that that's working well for everybody? We know that there are a lot of bridges in this area. I talked about this project area being 20 plus miles. So that's a very large area, and there are a lot of bridges. We're talking about 40 bridges in the project area. The project team is looking at each and every one of those bridges. So John is going to talk more about this. I don't want to steal any thunder there, but we're really looking at a whole host of possible improvements. Some will be a lighter touch, some will be a much deeper touch as far as the improvements that we're talking about for bridges. So John's going to talk about that as well. Interchange improvements, we already said there are a couple of interchanges that we're talking about. John will again get into specifics there. And then we want to talk about the additional travel lanes, because when we talk about reducing congestion, that is obviously an opportunity and a possibility that we are going to explore. We don't know yet what that's going to look like. So the team will take a closer look. Is there a possibility of an additional lane in certain areas? Is that additional lane something that could extend throughout the corridor? Are there other fixes and that's not needed? These are all the things that the team will be looking at, but we are exploring the possibility of additional travel lanes. And what I want to stress again is that at this part of the process, we're looking at ideas and we're really trying to fine tune where we are. And when we come to the public next, we'll have a much more definition to those improvements that we're talking about. So we are right now are in the listening stage. We want to hear your ideas and thoughts. We want to work to develop solutions. And the next time that we get together, we'll be sharing much more detailed information, and that will take the form of a preferred alternative. And we'll talk more about that as well. Okay, so we already talked about lots of bridges in this area, 40 bridges plus. When we look at those bridges, we'll be looking at a host of improvements that John will talk about, but we're also looking at widening the bridges because an additional travel lane is something that we're exploring. So we want to make sure that the bridges in the area could accommodate that additional lane now or in the future. Pavement replacement, we've talked about pavement already and the need there for some attention to make sure that we are extending the service life of that pavement. Drainage improvements. We've also talked about some of the drainage issues that are evident to folks in the area and the need for improvements there. So when you're talking about that pavement replacement, it's an excellent opportunity to make those long-lasting drainage improvements as well. And also we're going to hit on all of the things that matter to people who are driving the area. That's lighting, signage, the guardrail systems there. All of those are things that are expected to be upgraded. So a lot of work is ahead here. And there are some things that we want to make sure that we make clear to folks. So although we can't share specifics right now on what the improvements are going to look like exactly, there are some things already in the process that we know that I think are very important to share with the public. So when we talk about the possibility of an additional travel lane, if that is a road that we go down, know this, that any widening is going to happen mostly to the inside there. So we'll utilize that grassy median there. So if you drive I-70, there's that very wide median. That's the area that we would use for any widening on I-70. That brings us to the next point right there, because most of the widening would happen to the inside there with the grass median. We are not going to have a lot of right-of-way impacts. They're going to be very, very minimal, any right-of-way impacts associated with improvements for this project. So no homes, no businesses, no takes that are required on that side, very limited right-of-way impacts. So we feel like that's an important thing to let folks know as well. Even though we don't know exactly what construction will look like at this point in time, what we can tell you is we'll be working to make sure that maintenance of traffic, something that we have to look at, that we will be maintaining 2 lanes of traffic on I-70 during those peak travel times, 2 lanes in each direction. And again, during peak travel times, that's important to try to keep traffic flowing as much as possible. So as we, again, put more details to everything that we're doing, we will be developing a detailed maintenance of traffic plans, and we'll give you an idea of what to expect there. Anytime you talk about a new project, I think a lot of people want to know, how soon? When can this start happening? When am I going to see dirt turn? When can I start see the improvements happening? So what we expect is that in late 24 or early 25, we anticipate construction beginning on the Revive I-70 project. Okay, so big picture before I hand things off to John, there is still a lot of work to do here. I mentioned that we are in the environmental and preliminary design stage. So when I say that, that means that we're in the portion of this project where we are assessing needs and we're identifying solutions. So that's a common theme you're going to hear, but the work that we're doing now is it's very important. This environmental analysis is a prescribed process. It's a very detailed process, and it's required. So any project that is going to have federal dollars behind it, to have that federal investment, you have to follow that prescribed process from what's called NEPA. That was the National Environmental Policy Act. It has been around for many, many decades now. And when you have major projects like this one, it helps to ensure that all of the right information is being looked at. We're collecting a lot of data. We're taking a look at that information. We're talking to stakeholders. We're talking to members of the public. We're looking at all of the information coming in. We are developing alternatives. When we look at those alternatives, we are looking at potential benefits, impacts, costs, so that we can do those comparisons. So there is a lot of work that is going on now, and we will prepare what's called a draft environmental document and identify a preliminary alternative. And when we put that document together, you're going to see all of the work of the project team over the past several months that's been going into this project. So it's a very transparent process. You're going to see all of the information that is gathered that we took a look at. And again, public input, very important for this project. Adele touched on that earlier. Also, a lot of coordination, and that's with local, state, and federal officials, of course, and agencies across the board as well. So as you can imagine, a tremendous amount of coordination that goes into a project like this one. And on the big picture front, we touched on the timing of construction and the start of it. But I think it's very important to say for the duration, we don't know yet because we are still identifying those improvements. We'll need to get a contractor on board. We'll want to listen to their ideas on what construction is going to look like. And also, when you have a corridor that is this large, we're just not sure yet if that's going to be one construction contract or if that's going to be phasing or multiple contracts. So there's still some play there. So also funding for a project of this size, we'll need to identify those dollars. So we don't know yet how long construction will be with us, but that's all information that as we develop it, we will absolutely pass it along. And with that, I will pass things off to John to talk a little bit more about some of those possible improvements.
Yes, thank you, Mindy. So our next slide will be a overview of the project limits, which we've already seen. Things that we will be doing in the recap, road reconstruction. The pavement is near its expected life, end of life, where, pavement's only gonna last 50, 60 years. We've all experienced road construction in I-70 where they're NDOT's out patching, and it's now to the point where we really can't patch anymore. It's time to replace the pavement. We're also going to look at possible interchange improvements at 35 and 40. There are many bridges within the corridor, about 40, and that's along I-70 and a few of the overpasses. We'll be looking at those. And lastly, we'll evaluate and assess if an added travel lane in each direction is warranted through the project limits or a portion of the project or not warranted at all. So again, going back through the possible improvements, the bridges, they're about 40 within the area. If the third lane is warranted, every bridge will be widened to the inside. But this is an opportunity to do some maintenance. Just like a car, you have to change the tires and change the oil. Roads and bridges need to be maintained as well. So we're going to look at doing an overlay. And what that is we do a little bit of patching and we basically reseal the top of the bridge to make sure water doesn't get into that and make sure salt doesn't get into that. We're also going to be doing some painting. It doesn't mean we go out there with rollers, but if you look underneath the bridge, you'll see some beams, and the ones that are steel may be painted blue, or they may look a little rusty. So the contractor will go in, they'll sandblast the old paint, sandblast the rust, and then repaint those. Again, trying to extend the longevity of those bridges. The improvements at the interchange, we will be looking at US 40 and US 35. Anything from minor improvements to extend the exit ramps. I know some of those, especially at 35, they're pretty abrupt. We will be looking at extending those deceleration distances and the ability to get off the interstate, anywhere to possibly reconstructing the interchange as well. That will help with improve safety and mobility at both those interchanges, but we will also be looking at the acceleration and deceleration distances. So that's the entrance and exit ramps, and make sure those are proper at all the interchange within the project. And those alternatives are being developed right now. Additional improvements, similar to what Mindy already said, we will be providing new lighting at every single interchange within the project. New signage, pavement replacement. Again, is an opportunity to replace all the drainage structures. They've been in as long as the pavement, and steel doesn't last as, forever. And so it's about time to replace those as well. And then the guardrail and any positive protection on the outside, we'll get those upgraded as part of the project. Next slide, please. So where do we go from here? We've got a general timeline. Right now, we're in the purpose and need early coordination. Up until now, we've spent about a year researching the project, pulling the existing information, whether that's traffic data, whether that's crash data, looking at topographic data for the project itself, and developing that purpose and need, determining where are the crashes and how can we alleviate those. Next, we'll move on to the preliminary design and draft environmental document. That will be due this spring. That will have additional details of what is going to happen at the interchanges, but as well as document if the third lane is warranted and deemed necessary for the project. Then we'll have the final document that will come late spring. And in between, we'll have a public hearing. And then the final is after the document is signed, we'll move into final design with construction starting in late 24. Our next slide is just another representation of a timeline, again, showing that we've been working on this since about early 2022, again, developing the purpose and need and getting all the background information all the way to construction starting in late 24, but definitely early 25. The preferred alternative, that will be identified in the draft document and then solidified in the final NEPA document. The next meeting that we will have is a public hearing. Again, that will be in that mid to late springtime, where we will have additional information, probably see a typical section of Mainline I-70. It will also allow the public to see the possible interchange alternatives and the preferred that we will be moving forward in final design with as well. Then we'll open it up for a formal comment period after the hearing, and then depending on what comes about that, if there are no comments, then we'll be able to solidify those alternatives. If there are comments, we will address those as necessary and possibly even update the alternative from that. So then I'm gonna hand it back over to Mindy.
Perfect, John. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, so what we want to do is to make sure that we are sharing the information on how you can follow our progress. We've given you a little bit of a flavor where we are in that process, but we do want to make sure that you know how to get involved, because you are the folks who are living, working, traveling these roads. You live in this area, you see the needs. We like to think that we consider all of the big things, but if there's something that you're wondering, I wonder if they thought about this, or do they know this is a problem area, or do they know that this always happens here? Those are the things that you can share with us, and the more information that you can share and the more detailed, it just helps us develop this project. So please do, whether that's through the comment form or through the website, reach out to us and share any thoughts, concerns that you have. That is very important to this process. It is very collaborative, and hearing from the community only helps us out. And we do want to make sure that that's an easy process. So we'll talk a little bit more about the website and how to follow our progress. That website is revivei70.com. It's been live now since the end of the year. It went live in December. So if you haven't checked it out yet, it is a good avenue for information. We have a pretty good list of frequently asked questions on the website. So if you have a question, hopefully we already have an answer for you, but we said to folks last night, this is a live website. So as we have more information and we have more meat on the bones, that website will be growing, developing. You'll see more detailed maps. You'll see more specific improvements. You'll see more FAQs added. So if we are getting the same question from a lot of folks, that's going to be added to the list. So it's a dynamic website that's going to be a good resource for you. Also, it's really easy to follow our progress. Whether you want to make that a text that you receive right to your phone there, all you have to do, that number right there, you can do it right now, text to 468-311. All you have to do is text NDOT Revive I-70. We're not going to bombard you with messages there, but we will at key milestones. We'll let you know what's happening. We'll provide you updates on the project. If you'd rather have an update by email, use the website, sign up there. Also, we have social media channels. This is a great way to follow our progress, to follow what's happening with the project. So if you're a social media user, I would encourage you to sign up for updates on both Facebook and Twitter. Very easy, just search for Revive I-70. You're going to find us there. And those are usually very easy shares as well. So if you see information and you're wondering if others in the community are seeing that, share the post. Make sure that people are seeing that we have a meeting or what's going on. Okay, and if you have questions and comments, we do use the NDOT for You comment channels. It's a great venue. They have a very strong team there. They've used NDOT for You for a number of years. The great thing about having that centralized repository is that all of those questions and comments that come in are cataloged. We make sure they get responses. So either the team that you reach out to at NDOT for You is going to give you an answer there in the process, or if they don't have one, they're going to reach out to the project team and make sure that we get you an answer to your question. So do use those resources. If you are turning to NDOT for You, I would recommend that you refer to this project. So make sure that you reference Revive I-70 and make sure that you provide as much information as possible. So if you have a mile marker, if you, whatever you can do to provide more detail, it helps us in getting a response to you. So those are good things to keep in mind as well. And with that, I'm going to make one more final plug for the comment form. So I have it in my hand, but you're not going to be able to see that well. Those backgrounds don't help you at all. But the comment form is available on the website. So if you go to revivei70.com, you can either fill it out directly, or you can download it. If you want to send it back to the Greenfield District, we'll make sure that we get those comments, whatever's easiest for you. Or if you just want to shoot us an email as well, that's more than fine, and we'll do that. So that is the end of the presentation, but we will try to go through some of these questions, comments, concerns that we see here. And again, the intent is not to hit on everything, but if we can alleviate any concerns or provide quick answers, we want to do that. So John, with that, I saw Jeremy asked during the presentation, he was wanting to know plans, and if we were able to tell him yet if we're going to be closing the on-off ramp at exit 156. And I know maintenance of traffic plans are still being developed, but we do have an idea of what's going to be going on, so you can probably alleviate some concerns there.
Yes, so for starters, we will not be closing that in permanent condition. I don't believe that's what Jeremy is asking, but I do want to clarify that all ramps will be open in a permanent condition that they are currently now. There may be an opportunity for during a maintenance of traffic. We do anticipate that all entrance and exit ramps being open for majority of the time. Now, but I mean majority of the time, there will be maybe some nighttime closures to make some connections or to repave some of the ramps, but there will not be any long-term temporary closures to the ramps. We understand, especially at US 40, that a lot of folks use that interchange, and a lot of businesses rely on those being open to bring patrons to their businesses. So again, we will make sure that those stay open for majority of the time, but there may be some short-term closures, do some minor work, and by short-term, maybe a night, maybe a weekend kind of thing.
I hope that alleviates some concerns. Jeremy had a comment from Melissa and just wanted to point it out in case people weren't following the chat function. And again, we'll pass this along to the project team. She was just saying, with the continued growth that we're having there with industrial parks, there's more truck traffic, we see more commuters, that she seems that additional travel lanes she believes are warranted. So that's something, obviously, we take those comments, we review those comments, and that is a possibility, John, that the project team is looking at with the additional travel lanes. So we'll just have to wait and see how that shakes out. But we should have more information when we get together. We anticipate this spring, and it's probably going to be late spring. But as John said, the next time we get together, it's a public hearing. So it's a little bit different than a meeting. Last night, our conversations were at the boards and with project team members and attendees, but it was not a formal comment period. When we have that preferred alternative and that's available, we'll have a public hearing. People can sign up. They'll have up to 3 minutes. We'll have a microphone on the floor. We'll go down the list in order. They can make any comments, and we'll respond to those comments. So we'll have the draft environmental document there before we can move to the final environmental document. We take all of those responses and those questions, comments, and we provide responses in that final document. So that's part of that prescribed process that we talked about, but that's coming late this spring is the timing that we anticipate. So you'll see a lot more information then. And it's not only the hearing, but we'll have an entire comment period with lots of channels, email, mail, lots of ways to share your comments during that formal comment period.
I did want to add one thing to Melissa's comment. The reason why we can't right now tell folks that a third lane is needed is because we do have to analyze the traffic data and crash data. Melissa, you're probably right. There is a lot of vehicles that use this area, and it's probably warranted, but we got to make sure that we follow the correct procedure and processes and document why that is needed. So just want to add that little bit of info.
Perfect. Also had another comment on the need for an express lane. Thank you very much for your comment. John, can you answer this one on any plans to do work on the exit ramp and overpass on Highway 1?
Yes, so very minimal work at Highway 1. We are going to probably resurface the ramps all the way up to SR1. However, I don't believe we're doing any work to the overpass. That may be the overlay again, and that's just making sure that we reseal the deck. But that's about the most we're doing. I apologize, there's 40 bridges, and I don't have all the work memorized quite yet, but very minimal work to be done at SR1.
Fair enough. Good enough. Jared was talking about access, and that's too. I mean, we know this is a busy area, so you
Mhm.
do have local businesses, you have hotels, you have other businesses, and the goal when the team gets together, Jared, and works on that maintenance of traffic plan, is to realize that in order to get this work done, it's important to get the work done, and we want to do so as efficiently as possible. But we have to do that while maintaining access. We need to get people from point A to point B. So we will do whatever we can to minimize those impacts. And John already touched on some of that. So that's trying to keep any short-term closures to the weekend, to off-peak times at night. John, what am I missing on this front?
Not much. Yeah, we businesses from 40 will have access to and from their property at all times. We will require that. However, again, like I said, we understand that US 40, a lot of businesses thrive on obviously on patrons being able to access their property. So we'll make sure that happens. The I-70 bridges over 40 are not going to be touched right now. However, we still have to, like Mindy said, we're reconstructing the pavement on I-70. That's not an easy task, but we will make sure that businesses are still getting access. It just may be a little bit more inconvenient, but all construction is. But at the end of the project, it's going to be beautiful, and hopefully not have to go back out there anytime soon to do some patching. So.
And I will make a plug as you talk about construction, and it's never fun, but it is important. We will do our best to make sure that during the process, information is shared. People know exactly what to expect, what's going on. And to that end, I wanted to plug. There's a web page on the Greenfield site that is called Renew Richmond, and that's a great resource. There's a lot of work that's happening in Richmond right now with NDOT projects, and there's collaboration on that side. So left hand's talking to the right hand. We know what's going on. We do as much coordination, collaboration as possible. So if you haven't checked that out, there is a link on the Revive I-70 page that will take you straight to Renew Richmond. But again, it's kind of a one-stop shop for what's happening in the area. So you might find that to be a helpful resource as well. Another comment from Melissa on aesthetics and wanting the team to see what's possible there. I know people are always interested in gateway opportunities. So that's something that the team can take a look at. And then James had a comment on forward thinking and a possibility of a separate truck lane for autonomous trucks. We talked a little bit last night, John, you and I had a conversation with a gentleman, not necessarily on the autonomous side with trucks, but a separate truck lane. And we talked about some of the challenges there. I don't know if you want to provide the
Yes.
quick elevator speech on that.
Sure. So with a truck lane or an express lane, a lot of times those are separated by concrete barrier. And what happens is if we are looking at potentially adding a third lane, we're only going to widen into the median. So wherever there's grass, that would most likely become pavement with a concrete barrier. If we start talking about an express lane or a truck lane that's separated, you are now making things significantly wider, which means we would have to buy a right of way on both sides of the interstate for a significant amount. And that greatly impacts a lot of people in this corridor. It also require a complete redesign of every single interchange. So although that does seem like a great idea, for right now, the scope of work is to try and, like Mindy said, to minimize the amount of right-of-way we need, which right now we're trying to keep everything within existing NDOT right-of-way and not disturb folks and their properties the best we can. Also, express lanes are extremely expensive. And so we have to be cognizant of the taxpayer money that we have in mind, and adding the third lane will most likely accomplish what we are trying to get at, which is maintaining those trucks in those right two lanes while trying to leave that inside lane for passenger cars and typical motorists. Try and promote that safety and provide that separation between the trucks and normal everyday commuters kind of thing. So great comment. However, it's just very expensive. That's not really in the budget right now.
John, you just mentioned safety, and James had a question on safety of workers, which is always top priority. So he was asking about, possible ramp closures and accommodating work. And I can tell James without a doubt that absolutely keeping motorists, keeping workers safe is the goal of any project. You want to get through a major project like this and not have any incidents. So that's always top priority, is to make sure that people have the room that they need to safely work in the area. And that will certainly be the case with this project.
Yes. Yeah, it's trying to find that balance. Obviously, keeping lives at work and at home and getting home to families is the utmost importance. Closing the lanes on the ramps will allow that to happen a little bit more safely. However, it has a great detriment on the surrounding area at the same time. So, James, that's a fantastic comment. And when we move forward, we're going to have to find that balance of, maybe US 40, we try and keep the lanes open or the ramps a little bit open a little bit longer, but maybe at some of the other interchanges that don't have quite the corporate feel or industry that 40 does, maybe we can find that balance of closing those lanes to allow a little bit more expeditious construction at the same time. So great comment, James. We are looking at that and trying to find that balance.
And all the other pieces too that are part of that, James. So whether it's signage and advanced signage and getting people to slow down and enforcement in the area and barriers to protect, from live traffic and workers, all of those things are things that will be considered. So great point there, but absolutely safety always a top priority for everybody involved. And Valerie, I know you mentioned you might have some information that would be beneficial to the project team regarding truck traffic. So please, yes, there's contact information on our website. Any information that you want to share with us, we would be happy to have. So thank you very much on that front. Let's see here. Some of these questions, I don't think we're going to have all of the answers to yet. I'm not trying to gloss over them, but I know that we are still, like I said, fine tuning, and we're putting a little more detail on some of the thoughts that are out there. So when we come back to you late this spring and have that hearing, we'll have a little more information as far as the improvements, how far we'll be going, how much we'll be doing. We'll have a lot more of the detail we can add there. Until then, I don't know that we have some of the level of detail that folks are asking for on some of this front.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see,
Yes.
temporary speed restriction through the area during construction. Typically, when you have a construction zone, there is a reduced speed in the construction zone to keep workers safe, to keep drivers safe, to make sure everybody's paying attention. So I would anticipate that would be the case, is that you would have a reduced speed in the construction area. I think that's pretty standard to help ensure that everybody's safe on
Yes.
that front.
Yes, that is correct. We will reduce speeds. Now, whether or not people follow them is a different story, but yes, we will make sure that speeds are reduced. That is a definite safety feature for the workers, whether it's the contractor or NDOT, but also reducing the speed is also a safety measure for the traveling public. They may not realize that when they go through at 75 miles an hour, but slower speeds when you're coming up to barrier and a lot of signs, workers, is just safer all around for everybody.
Absolutely. James wanted to flag and make sure that the project team is keeping in mind when you talk about possibilities and an added lane. And if you're bringing that traffic closer together, think about the headlights in the other direction.
Mhm.
So that's something that the team will be considering, make sure that we keep everybody safe out there with what they're seeing. So good comment. Appreciate that. And I will flag before we wrap up this evening, we'll keep the chat function open for a few minutes in case people have additional thoughts, questions, comments. If we didn't go, I think we went through most of them, but if we did not specifically touch on a comment there, we are reviewing all of those. There were a couple of things we could not answer yet, but we should have more answers when we come back to you late this spring. And I will also tell you, we did record this meeting tonight. So if you have family, friends, coworkers, whoever it might be, who might be interested in this project, and please pass it along. This will be posted probably tomorrow. It'll be up on the project website. So you'll have a recording of this meeting, lots of information available there, and just the resources on the website as well. And you'll find that comment form. We do like to get to a cutoff point just so we can consolidate all of the comments. So comments that are associated with the public meetings we'll be accepting through the end of February. So that's February 28th. So whether you are emailing, uploading to the website, sharing information with NDOT for you, whatever is the easiest avenue, please do make sure that those comments associated with this meeting are received by the 28th of February. So lots of time on that front. And then watch for more information this spring when we get back together and hold that public hearing. Other than that, I'm going to thank you for your time. John, anything to add?
I just saw one from Miller about digital signs. Yes, I believe NDOT is actually putting up digital signs right now in the median. And then we will probably be adding a few more throughout the corridor.
Perfect. Okay, we will leave the comment channel open, and those will all be shared for the next few minutes. We won't do it all the way until 7 o'clock. So feel free, pull off, start your evening, start dinner for the family, whatever you need to do. We'll go ahead and sign off for this evening, but we appreciate very much you taking the time to join us, and stay in touch, and do follow us on those social channels, and sign up for the project updates, and you'll know then when we're coming back and having more information to share with you. Have a good evening, and thank you very much. Okay, we gave everybody a little bit more time there, and I think that those chats have come in, but do visit the website if you need anything else. And thank you very much for joining us this evening, and have a good night.